Welcome to our podcast, Being a Digital Leader, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly of Digital Transformation. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Liz Gaskin-Payne of IAG Loyalty today. Liz, thank you for joining us. I know your career has spanned a super interesting journey from broadcast engineering to business analysis and loyalty programs latterly. Liz has played a key role at IAG Loyalty, shaping strategies and delivering real value to customers and driving trust through the loyalty programs that you're engaged with. We'll dive into how data and AI are transforming customer experiences, and we'll explore Liz's leadership lessons in very high-pressured environments. Plus, we'll also touch on your personal insights, Liz, what excites Liz about the future of loyalty, and a few fun things about your travel habits and favourite tools. So, huge welcome, Liz. It's brilliant to have you with us today. We'll jump straight in. It'd be brilliant if you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your role.
Course. So I am Liz Gaskin-Payne. Hello, everyone. And I've been at IAG Loyalty for 8 years. So just for those who aren't in the know, IAG Loyalty looks after Avios, the currency. So the loyalty currency for the airlines such as British Airways, Iberia, Aer Lingus, Vueling, and others. I started at IAG Loyalty as a business analyst. Did that for a bit. Then moved on to become a program manager for a short period, looking after a transformation program, and then decided to do a little sideways step into product ownership, and have worked my way through various products since that time. And for now, I look after, I'm the product manager for their reward flights, so the seats that you can buy on planes that are just for loyalty customers.
Brilliant. And obviously, as an avid fan and collector of my Avios points,
Excellent.
I'm super
Good.
excited to meet you. I'm so fascinated because earlier in your career you were in broadcast.
Yes.
And maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that journey.
Yeah.
And you know, I know quite a few people who've started their careers in that space. It is incredibly specialized and unique in terms of the challenges that it brings.
Yes.
And your pivot is a really interesting one. So I'm really fascinated to understand what led you to leave broadcast and go into the world that you now operate in.
Yes, it's not kind of what I was visualizing at 21, but here we are. But like you said, I got a degree in broadcasting, and my first job was straight out of university, being a technical operator for QVC, the shopping channel. And that was just sort of doing a bit of everything, you know, sound engineering, camera operating, so on and so forth. And one of the areas was looking after the play out, so making sure QVC could reach the masses and everyone could get their midnight shopping. And I really liked that bit. So after about a year and a bit, I saw a job come up in the Discovery Channel Playout Centre, doing very similar thing, but at big scale. Obviously, I was reacting to live problems, but then when you started seeing patterns, and I was like, well, this problem keeps happening. Why is this problem happening? Slight variations, but the same thing. And it turned out it was, I was like, can we dig into this, because I'm at the reacting end of it and I'm not loving it. No one likes things breaking at 3 a.m. Can we see whether we can fix it? So I got asked to do a secondment with the department that was potentially causing us these issues. So I spent 3 months with them. I spent time going through all their processes, talking to 1 million people, and then came back with this is where it's going wrong. Can we do this, this, and this? They were like, yep, give it a go. And we reduced the error rate. It was something crazy. I meant to look up the stat before today, but it was something silly like a 90% reduction in a couple of months in errors. And then I realized I loved this stuff. And that's, and then I eventually
found your home at IAG.
I did find
Loyalty.
my home at IAG Loyalty after that point. And one of the last things I got involved in as a business analyst was the Avios travel rewards program, as it was originally known, and moving it into the British Airways Executive Club. And halfway through that, there was the project manager at the time left. And the program director turned around to me. He's like, do you fancy giving it a go? He's like, I think you can do it. I was like, Nick, are you sure? Like, this is enormous. And he's like, no, I'm here if you need me, but give it a go. And that was kind of my first step away from the detail of business analyst. Obviously, business analyst, you've got to get in and know an awful lot very quickly. But, you know, project management and then subsequently product management, you have to learn how to know enough, but leave the detail to those who, you know, that whose job it is. And that was a fascinating project. And then after that was the move from project to product. Having that, like you say, that much closer step to the customer and seeing how they react to something you think they'd like, as it's really fun.
Yeah, and I think product in the space of loyalty is a really exciting place to be, and that in itself is quite a specialised kind of area.
Yeah.
We talked about the customer loyalty programs, obviously like a key lever for a lot of big organizations, brands, when it comes to maximizing customer lifetime value. How do you, I'm interested in the transition into loyalty itself. Also the kind of immersion that you would have gone through to upskill in that space. And then it'd be great to start discussing how, we talk about the customer and delivering to them. How do you go about making decisions about what you're going to even put in front of a customer?
Should we start there?
We could start there.
Yeah, we could start there. So it's a really interesting one because no customer wants the same thing when you get down to the detail, but we always try and start with, well, what are the problems we're trying to solve? Okay, how do we identify the problems we're trying to solve? So it all boils down to data in some way, shape or form. We do research, we look at our analytics, we go out and talk to the customers, and that's where you start. Well, that's where we start. Of how do we make this better? How do we deliver what they want? What are what they're trying to achieve, and what are the problems they're currently having?
I'm fascinated also in the nuggets, because I think you find there's sometimes very nuanced customer insights.
Yes.
I think there was somebody that I was speaking to had led out at one of the big supermarket chains in terms of their data delivery, and they were talking about, they discovered, for example, it was before we were all mandated to buy reusable bags.
Yes.
But they found that people who chose to buy reusable bags had a very high propensity to convert into insurance products as well. So like really niche, or there's that famous toothpaste.
Yes.
One that, where you buy your toothpaste typically is where you do the vast majority of your grocery shopping.
Yeah.
Are there any surprising facts and insights along those lines?
I don't know whether it's unexpected, but whenever we talk to our customers, I always get really surprised in a lovely way about how passionate some of our base are with using their Avios and collecting them, and the best ways to use them, and they are creative. I have worked for Avios for 8 years. I know how to use the currency, but every time they come in, I'm like, okay,
wow,
you are teaching me. We had a guy come in one of our research nights, and he came in, he was like, I'm really excited to talk to you guys. I've been using my Avios to travel to every country in the world, and I'm nearly finished. I've got 2 more to go. So he was telling us all about it and this amazing journey he'd been on. So I love it. I do like, you've got you have people who use Avios and it adds value, and then you just get the people who it just seems to form quite a big part of their life.
Well, it's a very, you're helping somebody see the world and have all these incredible experiences. So, I think there's actually quite an emotive aspect to it.
Yeah, and I think so. And I think you've earned these Avios. You've earned your money, you've put effort into getting it. And one of the things that comes out a lot in our customer research is it's not just how much money you've put into trying to get these Avios. It's actually, do you feel that what's coming back is valuable to you when you're using them? Does it feel good to you? And that could be anything, and we do see that there's not just a singular way that people perceive value when spending Avios, it's very much personal.
Yeah, and I suppose you're very much also driven by consumer behaviours, trends,
and that changes,
quite rapidly. And I mean, obviously, your data, your analysis of all your consumer data is a key part of staying ahead of that.
Yep.
Are there any other things and you do as an organisation to make sure you are a step ahead from a product perspective with regards to that?
So there's always the competitor analysis, right? Like, what is everyone else doing? Anyone doing anything cool we'd like to have a go at?
Yeah.
And I know, you touched on data. Obviously, we're constantly looking at how it's performing now. But then it's, well, what do we want to do next? So we go about that in a few ways. Obviously, we talk to our customers. We try and talk to them as much as we can, either face-to-face or, feedback tools on our websites. We've also just started really going after experimentation in product. So rather than committing to bigger builds, where you don't really want them to fail because you've put a lot of money, time and effort into it, but sort of leaning more into that experimentation mindset of that learn fast, fail fast, etc.
And you've not spent a lot of time and a lot of money getting to that point.
Exactly.
And what is it, because that's quite a shift into kind of a rapid, as you say,
it's really
fail
a
small,
big shift.
fail fast a way of operating. What has facilitated that, like that change?
So at IG Loyalty, our product journey is, hang on, what year are we in? About five-ish years old, maybe a little bit older now. So it took us a while to get that capability, but now as a product department, we're all in this sort of level of maturity where we've got good, robust products that are doing well, doing really well, but there's no big obvious features now to go after next. So we're now all,
you can really optimize and experiment.
We're now very much in the optimization space, which is really, it's fun. I'm having a great time, to be honest. After years of big heavy lifting, it's now really nice to be like, well, we know it works, as in this product works, that's great, let's have some fun tweaking around with it, and we may get some really interesting or surprising things coming out of this as customers react in a way that we don't expect, and do something different and fun with that. So,
it's interesting, in terms of culture in a company, because when you come to talk about, one of the things that goes hand in hand with innovation is having a culture that also embraces failure.
Yes.
And lets people fail.
Yes.
And it's interesting, the cultural aspect of that shift and how that's felt.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, like you say, that when you said there about that failure's okay, that's such a shift for companies. It was really interesting to watch. And I think we're probably still a bit tentative in some areas on that one, but I think a lot of companies are. I think we have a very good, supportive leadership level who are like, it's okay, we'll back you up, go ahead. Obviously be smart about it, right? Have a hypothesis that you want to prove out, think about the way you can do it as small as possible, so if it doesn't work, cool. But they're very keen on us reporting the successes and the failures, so that we can start to really socialize what we're learning, because a failure isn't necessarily a failure. If it doesn't work, we learn that customers don't want that. So it's still a learning and a good learning.
But
yeah, exactly, and we won't do it again. And if someone comes along and goes, well, why don't we do this? And we're like, well, okay, but we did this, just so we've done this and it didn't work. Can we think about a different way of doing that? So.
And in terms of defining your, you talk about developing a hypothesis. Where are you on the maturity of how you use data to do that within the organisation?
I think we're getting there. We're sort of really leaning into it this year. It sort of started last year and it's really coming into its own this year. I think, our data team is great and supportive in helping us, like, okay, is this a good hypothesis? Are we using the data correctly? And it's grounding us quite a lot, as opposed to just like,
I've got a gut instinct.
I've got a feeling this is going to be great. Like, which is fine, and I think a lot of great ideas obviously start with, I think this might work. But that, that whole working with the data team, working with our analytics to be like, I'm seeing something here that could back that up. Or if you don't, what's a good test of that, and a small test of that to gauge demand and help you build the data, help you build the evidence, and just keep going on from there.
That's super interesting. So, absolutely, you've made it really clear that gathering customer insights is really vital for you as an organization, and fuels a lot of the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
Can you share specifically how programs like Insight at Night have shaped your work? And maybe explain what that is.
Yeah, of course. 'Cause, fair enough. So Insight at Night is a program that's set up by our lead UX researcher, Bonnie Silver. And what it is that it's an evening with pizza and wine, which is always welcome, where we invite customers from the British Airways Exec Club to come in and talk to our product teams. So in the last one we did, I just gave them a brief, it's a flight search tool. Have a look. Have a play. I'm not going to try and guide you. Just tell me what you think. The things we were trying to gather were, is it intuitive? Does it make sense? Can you find what you want to find? There's something about having a customer sitting down right next to you with your laptop in front of them, and they are just going for it. They are clicking around, trying to do what they would normally do, and it uncovers all sorts of weird and wonderful things, which is great.
Well, I think for the raving fans, and you have many,
yeah,
being able to be part of that, experience of being able to work the product team and help influence and shape is exciting as well.
They love it. They seem to love it. They're like, oh, I really like this. So
you also you also get all the non-verbal cues. How people are physically. You can tell a lot by observing.
You really can.
Users actually. Utilizing the product. So
if you can see they're trying to click around, trying to find things, and you can ask them, you're like, can I ask what you were trying to do here? Which when you use tools like Hotjar that do screen recordings, you can't ask that because it's, you just can see them moving back and you make an assumption, right?
You're not hearing the thought process.
No, so it's great. It's really great.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, they're fun nights. They are really fun.
Yeah, and keep the customer very front and center in the mindset of the product teams and everybody who's working in the business.
Yeah.
And obviously, we've touched on data loads and but obviously the capability that now exists when it comes to data platforms it is very different to what it was a few years ago. And the tools and the insights it gives us. How do you think having that level of sophistication when it comes to data has changed the nature of loyalty programs?
I was having a good think about this one. And I think loyalty's been on a really interesting journey, particularly since the pandemic. Loyalty now needs to work really hard. I think if we think about, the original loyalty programs of 10 years ago, you had a physical card when you shopped, scan, and I can't recall using my points on those, but probably did. But now a lot of companies have loyalty programs. Huge numbers of companies have loyalty programs in some way, shape or form. So loyalty programs now have to work really hard to get someone to invest in theirs. And data has become really key in trying to shape that and try and grab that, So things like personalization are now so powerful. Customers want it to feel tailored to them because so many people in so many companies do it well, right? So when you come across something that looks a bit generic, and so data is key there. What do customers want? What does this customer want? And that capability is now there to be able to drive those experiences and really attract and retain those customers, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think having that curation based on the data that you have on me as a consumer, you're doing the heavy lifting in curating on my behalf.
I think it's all about ease now in any way, shape or form. Like you say, it's the making sure what you see is relevant to you when you decide to engage, whether, in the case of Avios, whether you're collecting or whether you're spending, that it's easy.
I think when we first caught up, we touched on this in that, you get a lot of insight out of your data, but you also need to, at the same time, yes, be data driven, but there is an element of blue sky thinking that you might miss if you become solely data driven. So when it comes to real creativity and innovation, how do you manage getting the balance between those things?
It's a really good question, because like you say, if you know, creativity, innovation is great and should be encouraged all the time, right? There's a few things we've done over the years to make sure that we keep that. You know, on the sort of the day to day, a lot of stuff does start with data, but how we utilize that, what do we do with that? That can get really creative for the team. We have great fun. Me going like, okay, I'm seeing this. I've got this hypothesis. Guys, what do you think we should do? I'm open to all suggestions here. So there's that part where, okay, yes, you start with a data-driven decision, but the way you use it, that's where the innovation and creativity really comes out from the team. But the other thing we've done in the past is we ran a hackathon about a year ago for the reward selling platform, so the flights, hotels, etc. So we all got together and spent a day ideating. Well, we did it beforehand, actually. We came up with some ideas beforehand, but we deliberately didn't put any data in to that one. We gave a few areas of focus, like there was some travel trends stuff, there was some how to enhance tech, things like that, but no data underneath it as to what's happening now. It's like, guys, come up with some ideas. My goodness, we had 50 ideas submitted for that one. So those opportunities where we're just like, what do you
create
think?
That space almost for people,
not
to be like solely focused on the data, but be able to really
just like, guys,
think freely around the space.
What do you think? You work on it. How, what would you do with it? And it does come up with some really interesting ideas. And we've had, some of them, some of them we released last year. So
it
all
works.
Good. It works.
And we'd be remiss getting through a podcast talking about digital transformation without mentioning AI.
Yes, of course.
Cutting through, and there is a lot of hype, but cutting through all the hype when particularly in your space where you're talking about vast amounts of data, AI has been, a big consideration for you. Do you have any kind of recent examples where it's been like a use case where it's been really helpful in helping to solve a challenge?
It's a smallish one, but it was really valuable. So actually happened a couple of weekends ago. So in reward flights, because the seats that are available are limited, it's valuable. As data, people want to find the seats. So sometimes that does result in people trying to get access to that information. And we're very good at spotting that, and we know how to block it. It's not a new problem for us. However, after one of these incidents, the guys came to me, they're like, Liz, we'd really like to try this. We've seen an AI anomaly detector that watches the traffic and the patterns, and it will tell us if it thinks it's seeing something dodgy. Like, guys, give it a go. Better than us trying to figure out whether we're seeing something by human eye and see what AI does. 40 hours later, it picked something up over the weekend. It was brilliant.
So, it felt like a real win.
It was such a real win, and on something in theory so small. The team and I are looking at those opportunities as well as customer facing ones.
So what's your kind of, because there is, in tech, there is such a propensity for, organizations saying, we've got to do something.
Yes, it is a buzzword.
Yes. What are we doing with AI? How do you safeguard that it's actually really adding value for you?
So it's a really interesting question. We're just starting our AI journey. And that was one of the first questions I asked. I was like, how do we make sure we're not just chucking it in because it's the shiny new kid? And the way we're sort of going about it is we've identified a potential use case. where is AI going to help us? Is it on build time? Is it on human time, as in so someone's not sitting there analysing data? Is it going to help us do something better for the customer? It's got to be what is it doing? What benefit would it give us over the normal approach, if you will? And sometimes it doesn't, right? It doesn't give us exactly what we need, or it makes it a bit more confusing, or it's a high risk of things like hallucinations and things like that. But actually, if you do that whole what's the additional benefit it will give, or does it do something different or better that we would like to try, then try it, right? But if it doesn't, no, let's just not chuck in a chat, because that's what everyone's doing.
Yeah. So it probably just comes back to your philosophy and your approach to innovation.
Yeah.
Is, being able to experiment with it.
Literally.
And really demonstrate whether it does or doesn't add value. Yeah. But I agree with you across the array of those domains that you've called out.
Yeah. And we're trying it everywhere. Like we're starting to look at it everywhere. There's the working of the team itself, their day job, and how it helps them, and we're using it to analyze like search behavior. Was just starting that piece of we can see what people are searching for when they're looking for a flight, and that's great, but is there any interesting trends or patterns which, if you think about it, a data scientist, that may take a while to spot and to generate those insights, and having AI to be like, well, this is what AI is seeing, and it doesn't necessarily need to be gospel as well. I think that's a really important point to remember, that just because AI is saying something, let's not immediately assume that is the gold standard and that's what we have to do. It's does it make sense? Do we want to validate this another way just to be sure before we go ahead? I think it's got the potential to be really powerful.
What is the use case from a search perspective?
So it's I love this one. I was talking about it yesterday. So we have lots of data about what people book, and that's great and really useful and valuable to us. But when you're dealing with reward flights where it's limited availability, there's only 12 to 14 seats per plane, depending on plane. We don't know whether that's what the customer
actually wanted in the first place.
We've not really had the capability to look into that in detail up until now. And I'm really excited about it, because when you're looking at, okay, customers are booking these destinations, these dates, great. But actually the search data is showing us something really different. They're searching for all these different things, and you can start to drive some really interesting insight off that. Are people really fixated on a date or a destination, and that's what they're trying to do? Or are they browsing a lot more, and therefore if you try to suggest something to them, they'd be really open to it? And, where are the areas of high demand? Because we're using booking data for that quite rightly at the moment. But actually,
if you go back to search data, it can show you where the real demand is.
Something else. So it's really going to help us in my team in flight on what we do next. Because if we can see that customers are looking for something fundamentally different, or for example, you see a customer, they search London first, and then they do Paris, and then they do Rome. You're like, city breaks, is my assumption. They're looking for a city break. And you can start to drive some really interesting patterns, and then it goes into the personalization piece of here's some natural groupings that we're seeing our customers searching for. Like they're going around all the islands of the Caribbean trying to find a flight in the Caribbean. So, group that or do something with that. And I'm hoping it'll be really powerful data to the business overall, just with how we help our customers, how we put stuff in front of them, how do we help them spend their Avios? How do we make it easy and enjoyable for them? So really looking forward to that.
No, that's really exciting, because I suppose when it comes to the personalization, that search data will give you some tremendously valuable insights.
I'll say look at the companies that are doing it, do it well, right? Netflix,
Amazon, Well, and customer expectation and demand as a result of those experiences is tremendously elevated, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's part of, as you know, about people expecting loyalty programs to really look after them rather than the other way around. Because we're surrounded by these companies that do this very well. Yeah. And if you can't keep up, it
raises the bar.
It does raise the bar, but that's okay. We're up for a challenge. We're happy with that.
I love it. And you know, in all of the work that you do, and you've spoken about it in the context of your broadcast part of your career.
Yeah.
Also within IAG Loyalty, the collaboration across departments, functions, teams, being really critical. And I think, you know, we've spoken about the fact you worked in really high pressure environments. Yes. You lead teams. You've been part of growing out the product team. How do you keep your team aligned and motivated when the stakes are high? Because at the end of the day, you are doing, you know, it is a well-loved and known brand. But if you get it wrong and it goes out to a mass market, the stakes are high, right?
Yeah, it's not ideal. So my team, last year we had probably one of the biggest years we've ever had in terms of high-pressured critical deadlines. Last year we launched a flight selling platform with Aer Lingus and did some things in Avios.com. So I literally bounced my team from horrible deadline to horrible deadline for a whole year, and they've just about forgiven me. But particularly when it's a big initiative, therefore more complex, whether you like it or not, it's really easy for myself and for the team to just get a bit overwhelmed with everything that's going on and the noise, right? You know, the bigger and the higher the stakes, the more people like to get involved, right? So with my team, obviously what I try and do is, so for example, my development team, try and keep them away from the noise, you know, is one thing. I'm a little bit of, myself and other members of the team, a little bit of a filter to make sure that team can crack on. And my team have what we're trying to achieve and the guardrails around it. And that's it, lads. You know, don't worry about anything else. We will tell you, you know, we will update you, but don't worry about everything else that's going on around, the organised chaos that's going on around. And obviously people want to know what they're doing. They want to know, you know, is it done yet? Can we have an update? And so on and so forth. So the role, the leadership role I play and others play is being that face.
I suppose leadership and your own personal style of leadership evolves over time. And I think, you know, over generations, what represents great leadership is very different. I have some interesting conversations with my dad, who's 81, around leadership.
Yes.
And yes. Just, you know, just the differences, right?
100%.
And I also know you are an alumnus of the And We Lead program.
I am.
Which I hope you enjoyed.
I did.
What's one lesson from the program that stuck with you personally?
There's quite a few, which is great. You know, it was, I really got a lot out of that program. Can I have two?
Yeah, of course.
The first one was very much the importance of stakeholder management and considered stakeholder management. Part of the leadership program, you get a little bit of coaching. And I remember having a discussion with Nick, who was coaching me, and just a bit like, Nick, like, I've got varying levels of information. How do I structure this? How do I make it appropriate? And I don't want to do a meeting with 50 people. You know, how do I do this? And it really helped me. And he helped me with some tips on how to do like big stakeholder maps and kind of the information and who needs to do something off that information, who just needs to be involved. A bit of a reset of my skills, to be honest, because it's something I know, but I'd hit a bit of a mental block, and he was like, just take a breath and go back to basics and start this again. And that whole how to manage a huge number of people with different needs, the team need to know, my team need to know certain amounts of information, but I'm talking to data and they need to know something else, and my manager needs to know something else, and just how to tailor that appropriately. So it was really brilliant for that. And the other bit was don't afraid to be vulnerable. I loved that. There was a great moment where one of my fellow managers in the course started talking about imposter syndrome. She's brilliant at what she does. You would never tell she suffered from imposter syndrome. And all of us were like, me too. And just that vulnerable
opened up
that vulnerable moment where the 8 of us, 9 of us who, were in leadership positions, managing, complex teams, having to be like this very confident face who knew what they were talking about all the time, just having this lovely vulnerable moment all together. We're a bit like, it's okay that we don't sometimes know what the heck we're doing.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And when you talk about innovation and vulnerability, the kind of if you're able to be authentic and be vulnerable in that kind of setting, and it kind of humanizes the workplace, doesn't it?
Yeah, I had some really lovely feedback from my team a little while ago, because just asking them, like, it's been a big year, guys, how did it go? What could I have done better? 2025 is also going to be quite busy. And a few of them said, which was, you say, was lovely, was, we love how honest and vulnerable you are with us. You're quite comfortable telling us if you don't know what the heck you're doing, or you don't know. And I loved that, because it's always, you always feel a bit, as a leader, you're like, should I be doing this? Should I be saying, I have got no idea what to do? I'm going to figure it out, but I
it's
don't
the honest
know.
truth, right?
It is the honest truth, right? And they were very honest with me about it. They were like, we'd rather you did that than just,
but I suppose
made it
also,
up or faffed
it. And it gives other people permission when they are feeling like that in your team to also take that approach and share that.
Definitely.
Which often, I think, for a lot of people, including myself, it takes the heat out of it.
It does. If we're a bit like, we're in this together. There's no, I don't like hierarchy anyway, but it takes the hierarchy out of it. Just like, right, everyone's saying they don't know what the heck we're going to do. Let's work it out together. Don't panic, everyone. It's really nice, and it's meant I've got a lovely relationship with my team. I hope they agree with me, but it's
I'm sure they do.
and where we can be that honest with us, where they can tell me, I don't know, Liz, whether we can do this. I'm like, okay, let's talk it out, and vice versa. So I think it's
mutually beneficial.
It's a really important part of being a leader, because you get a lot out of being vulnerable. You actually get some really interesting next steps, results, etc. when you're saying, I'm not going to tell you the answer because I don't know the answer. Can you help me work out the answer? And then you get insights and opinions from from members of the team that you wouldn't see
you
yourself.
Otherwise would never got.
Because I'm not a developer, or I don't work day to day with the backlog anymore. And they're like, oh, what about this? Like, that's great, So it's really important.
Yeah, and I like your point around meaningful stakeholder engagement, because particularly when there's a lot of change involved as a result of the product work that you're driving. I think if your stakeholder engagement is really meaningful, and tailored as an approach, the kind of change off the back of that, it is much easier, isn't it?
Yeah, since the leadership course with Ann Digital, I've been putting that all into practice, and just seeing the results from that, just the like you say, the more meaningful conversations rather than just a broadcast of what I'm up to
like, because I have to update people,
which may not, people like listen in one ear, potentially out the other. It's not engaging. But actually, if you're going in with this is your tailored version of my stakeholder management, you can have a meaningful conversation. You can actually come up with a plan, and definitely seeing the benefits from that.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing that. And with so much constant change in tech, in your sector, in the space of loyalty, how do you help probably for yourself and for your teams stay focused on the right priorities?
That's a really good question, because we are quite vulnerable to change in my product, because there's a lot going on in the flight world. There's a million different things you can do. We make sure that so obviously every year I have the KPIs I need to deliver against, and that's absolutely fine. That ladder up into the business overall goals for the year. But then when I sit down with the team, we sit down every quarter, and I'll be like, okay, guys, for this quarter, here's our KPIs. Here's 3 OKRs that I've set for the quarter. This is why. This is, the data behind it, or the business behind it, because some of it has to be business driven, not just data driven, obviously. And then we sit down and we work out how we're going to achieve that together. Because I'm not going to tell them how they're going to, how we're going to achieve that, because they're going to have to build it. So I want them to be invested in it, and it to make sense. They need to get the why and therefore engage in it, right? So we do that exercise together. So for example, one of mine this quarter is understand what customers want when they're looking for a flight. Have some insights by the end of this quarter of what customers want when they're looking for a flight. So we all get together and we're just like, okay, guys, let's just brainstorm this one out. What do you think we could do with the tech we've got, with the data we've got, with the access to these teams we've got? What could we do? Generate ideas, or vote on it, come up with a few that we're going to, like 3 or 4 that we're going to attempt to achieve in the quarter. And then everyone knows why we're doing it. And everyone can see that everything that they're focused on is leading into this. And it helps us with things that aren't leading into this, So if anything comes in and people are like, oh, can you do this? I'm like, can you come back? Unless it's obviously critical. Yeah. Sometimes you do have to drop and do stuff, but it just keeps us focused on the common goal and stops the team going off on a bit of a tangent, because when at the end of the day it comes back and a bit like, does it help us understand this or any of the other OKRs? I'm like, no. We're like, okay, let's have a chat as to why you think we should do it, or we're going to park it. Yeah, because actually no, we've gone off on a bit of a tangent. It's not
a priority.
Yeah, I found it really helps us, and keeping it in the quarters, right? Because it shifts so quickly. If I set that for the year, I'm going to have to burn them down to the ground at some point and start again. But every quarter, I like to hope it wouldn't go too dramatically different in a quarter, and it's smaller achievable goals, keeps the team motivated. They're like, we can see what we've done here, and this is the outcome in a very short period of time, which is great, and they're really enjoying. Obviously, we've come off the back of a massive year plus program, so moving into this world where we can see nice, tangible outputs every quarter, lovely. We're all enjoying that massively.
And I suppose it's taking your product mindset and applying that to your way of leading the team, and how you keep everyone on point and accountable and aligned. So,
just this, guys, come on, this is what we're trying to achieve. Are we sure what you're doing matches this? Yeah. And if it doesn't, why?
Very logical.
Oh, so yes, it is.
I like it. And we might have people who will be watching or listening, who are entering product or loyalty management without any formal training. What skills or traits would you call out as being maybe 2 or 3 key ones that everybody should be aware of?
It's really interesting because it can be really intimidating. I remember when I started, and obviously there's buzzwords flipping everywhere, Kanban, Scrum, all sorts, and I'm like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing, and people are trained in how to do these. But I think the skills that carried me through that is the whole, what do I want to call it? Not being so stressed about the core skills. In the end of the day, product is and agile is developing something quickly with the customer in mind. How you achieve that is okay. It doesn't matter if we're not all doing it the same. So that kind of open-mindedness, that whole, accepting that there's about 12 different ways, probably a lot more to do this, and you just need to work what works for you. So you need to be really comfortable with being uncomfortable, I think, in the beginning, because there's a lot of buzzwords and a lot of processes that people can and do use. So yeah, resilience maybe is probably a better word to be uncomfortable in walking into that space where you don't feel like you've got training to back you up. You've got to be ready to learn in that result, in that thing as well. So you've got to be engaged and passionate about what you're doing, and a really healthy interest in understanding something at a high level. You know, being interested in what you're doing, I think is really key. I think, you know, if you don't know anything about your product, how can you do anything there? You don't need to know necessarily every single detail behind it, but if you are there to learn and you're like, yes, I'm there to learn about my product and how my team work, and we know what we're going to try and achieve, how we get there, I'm going to have to figure this one out.
But I think it's a really important point in terms of do it in a space where you actually, you do really care about the outcome that you're delivering, and you have a personal interest and passion in the product and the area that you're working in.
I think so. That's my,
No, I mean, I totally would be aligned to that, because I think I would struggle to get out of bed every morning.
I do feel you got to love what you do. You may not love it every day, don't get me wrong, but I do feel you need to be invested and interested in what you do. Like, I came over to IAG Loyalty because I love to travel. I was already a member of Avios. I'd already had a great time spending Avios. I was like, I would like to, I'm clearly intrigued by this program, so I'd like to come and work for them and see how that goes. Yeah. So I do feel, you've got to be engaged in something, whether it's the product itself, so for me, it's the product itself, I love what I do, or you're engaged in taking like you love taking a big complex problem and making, and you're passionate about breaking that down, or you love developing a team. There's got to be something, because you've got to own and drive this thing, and no one's going to tell you what you should be doing next with it. Well, they can, but that's not the whole point of the product owner.
It's far less fun, right?
It's far less fun, and it's not really the point of the product owner. The product owner is meant to be saying, it's sort of driving the direction a bit. So you've got to have a passion there, and like you say, you've got to want to get out of bed in the morning, right? It's a very long time to be working if you're not loving it.
I am fully aligned with that. and as digital continues to accelerate, we've touched on AI, what excites you about the future of loyalty programs?
There's a few bits there. So the personalization element that's becoming so powerful really fascinates me, because we want people in our loyalty programs. Every loyalty program wants people in their loyalty programs and getting value out of it and coming back and developing that deep connection with the brand. And I think personalization and potentially the role AI plays in that is going to be so exciting to see. It can be quite clunky. It has been quite clunky in the past, right? Taking a data set and doing something quite static with it potentially. But now we're in this really dynamic space where we can tailor experiences for you, and not just for you every day, you depending on what you're doing at that moment in time. I've had a really interesting discussion previously about my travel behaviour. And actually, if you look at me, as my demographic, 40s, got kids.
Liz.
It was a milestone. I'm not sure how I felt about it. But living in the southeast, etc. So on paper, this is my demographic is X, but how I travel doesn't match up to it. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. But sometimes I travel for work, and then sometimes I take my kids on the all-inclusive, and then sometimes I go on a girly holiday with my friends, and then sometimes I travel on my own.
You're multifaceted.
I am multifaceted, as are we all, right? Yeah. And putting you into a bucket based on your sort of absolutes, I works to a degree.
It's an oversimplification.
It is that's a great word for it. It is an oversimplification, because particularly something like travel, you don't always go on the same holiday, and you shouldn't, if you don't want to, you shouldn't have to, you should be, people are open to budget travel, and they're open to high-end travel, and they're open to long haul, short haul, and beach breaks and city breaks and all sorts, so that ability to react to how the customer is behaving in the moment rather than just a flat response. Really looking forward to that. I think that's really exciting. Only because I look at myself, I'm like, I would love that. You can see that I'm searching for single traveller, so
bring me stuff that you think I'm going to love.
Yeah.
And I think you're right in that we've spoken about personalisation for a very long time.
Yes.
Because I think as humans, it resonates as a concept. And the tech, the tooling hasn't really been able to deliver to it until recently.
Until now,
yeah. So I think I agree. It's going to be really exciting to see what companies such as yours do to bring the consumer closer to experiences that they otherwise wouldn't have been aware of or considered.
And that's the thing. That's what we're trying to do, right? You may start with an idea in mind, but wouldn't it be amazing to be like, well, we can see you're starting to look at this. Have you thought about this? And open up an amazing thing you never would have thought of. Because obviously the world is vast and there are many, many things you can do. Like where to start with, where you're going to go. If we can help simplify that down and provide a relevant ideas to spark, engagement. You go off and you have an amazing holiday to somewhere you didn't really know about before. Isn't that a great experience?
Yeah.
That you're like, Avios told me I could go here.
Yeah.
I went and it was great, So it's I think it's Avios and other loyalty programs. There's a huge opportunity there. Potentially a bit scary about how much we'll know about people, but I think
if
it's
the value exchange is there, right? If the value exchange is there, well, for a lot of consumers, they don't.
Oh, value is so important. It comes up over and over again in our research. I want to feel like I'm getting value, and it could be monetary value, but a lot of the time it's nothing to do with monetary value. It's I feel like I've got something I want out of this.
You understand me as a consumer.
And it was high value to me.
Yeah.
Which could be anything. Yeah. Right?
No, that's really interesting, and we've touched on travel.
Yes.
So I'm really interested in understand, and you work in the space. Yeah. What is your favourite travel destination that you've been to today? And I'm really keen to know, are there any hot locations that you are going to be visiting in the future?
You've got me on one of my favourite topics. I would say my trip to Japan last year. A lot of people have been going to Japan recently. There's a very good reason for it, because it's really good. I went last August. Terrible time of year to go.
Very hot.
Oh, it was so hot. But I had an opportunity where my parents took the kids away on holiday for a week, and I was like, I think I'm going to jump on a plane and go somewhere. I'm very lucky. IG Loyalty does spectacular travel benefits, which allows these sorts of things to happen alongside using my Avios. And I went on my own, and I had some plans, but I walked 60 kilometers in 3 days and had the best time. Beautiful place. So highly recommend if you get to go, because it's great. What am I doing next? So I have this tradition with my group of friends that whenever any one of us hits 40, we go away. It's my turn. It was my turn last year.
Love it.
So we went to Rio de Janeiro, which was fantastic. This year it's one of my friends, and she set me some criteria. I got to do some personalization on her, basically. So I was like, Kate, just tell me, just where's your guidelines? And I came back with her some recommendations. And we're going to Cappadocia in Turkey.
Oh, wow.
This year, which I'm really excited about. Never been to Turkey, but it looks astonishing. So we're going to go do that. Where else? I will definitely go somewhere else this year.
But
there is always somewhere.
Yeah, really exciting. And I'm sure your friends really love having somebody who's very specialised and come up with really highly personalised recommendations on travel destinations.
They also loved the Avios element, because these flights, I used my Avios as my birthday present to her, and, you know, maximised everything I know about the currency and got those flights for a very good price.
You got a good deal.
I got a good deal. But, you know, because you know where to, if you know where to look, there's some great stuff in there. So we're like, right, we're going.
I see Liz's tips and hints on getting the best out of your
yes.
your loyalty
I
program.
have been hit up for that.
I
before.
can imagine dinner party conversations.
Yes,
I am sure.
Yes,
and you know us well at And Digital.
I do.
And you know we love our and titles that denote, you know, a little bit about ourselves and our professional lives. We all have normal job titles, but our and titles denote something about our personal lives. So it speaks to us, bring our whole selves to work.
Yep.
If you had an and title, what would it be and why?
I don't think this one's going to be a shock, really, but it would be and travel agent. Now, the reason why I say this is you've probably gathered from me going on about the various trips I've been taking, that I love organising this stuff people and organising where to go and how to do it well.
Oh, Liz, you sound like the perfect friend to have.
I knew they were friends with me for a reason. But no, it's such a passion of mine.
Yours.
It's such a passion of mine. I love travelling, which is great considering where I work, and how to do it in a way that feels great, you know. And Avios, I find, is such a key part of that for me. Just like, you're having this experience and you haven't actually paid that much for it, and this loyalty program you're part of has unlocked this experience for you. So yes, I am the designated,
it's a very natural and title.
Yes, travel agent.
Travel
that is
agent.
It. Yeah.
And it's so lovely. I mean, I think you speak so passionately and eloquently around kind of your role, but how you epitomize what it can mean when you find, you know, those common areas between the discipline you love working in, things you love doing in your life, and the power of bringing those things together. Yeah, no, I love it. I'm very lucky. Yeah. I'm very lucky where I sit and what I do. It allows me to merge both sides of my life. Well, all a job. Yeah, it's amazing. And it's been so lovely to get to know you a bit better. I know a lot of our team work closely with you and the IAG loyalty team, but it's really lovely to spend time with you. Thank you so much. That is everything for this edition of The Good, the Bad and the Ugly of Digital Transformation. If you have enjoyed our podcast today, please do remember to follow and subscribe so you'll always know when there is a new episode out to enjoy.